I want to start with a little bit of trivia today. I'm going to ask you to put your thinking caps on for what we're going to do first. I want to show you some statistics back from the year 2020, and I want you to figure out what caused this. Okay, so 2020, it's related to chess, as you can see. Global chess sales skyrocketed. Chess sets sales went up 87%. Book sales went up 603%. Goliath Games reported that set sales went up 1,048% on their website in this time period. Chess.com recorded a 500% increase in chess members, people joining, and App Store and Google Play both reported 63% growth in chess games being downloaded. So what in the world happened in 2020? Okay, yep, COVID. Queen's Gambit appeared on Netflix. So I don't know if you've seen this, but it's all about chess and this young woman who has a brilliant aptitude for chess. And what happened is so many of us were sitting at home with COVID. We had nothing to do, so we watched this show, and all of a sudden there's like, oh my goodness, I think I could play chess. And we started downloading the apps and buying the boards and buying the books. And so here's what happens. Attention awakens desire. So we point our attention to, so like that new song sang about attention. You have my attention. You're all that I want. The first sentence can lead to the second sentence. It doesn't automatically. But attention awakens desire. It's like, man, I kind of like this chess thing. I've never done it. I wonder what it'd be like. I think I'm going to try it. And desire often leads to action. Now, be really careful. I want to be really specific about this. It doesn't always lead to action. Did 100% of the people who watch Queen's Gambit buy a chessboard? No, of course not. But this is the pattern. Attention leads to desire, and desire often leads to action. You saw the same thing when this movie came out. So I don't know if any of you saw this, but the heroine in this movie does everything with a bow and arrow. So you know what happened? Membership in USA Archery spiked 105%. All of a sudden, everyone's like, you know what? I kind of think it'd be fun to shoot a bow. So attention, the movie focused our attention on archery. And that created a desire. It's like, I wonder what it'd be like to shoot a bow. It could be kind of fun. And then that led to action. Now, did it lead to action for everyone? Did everyone go buy a bow? No, of course not. But consistently, what you're going to see is this pattern working its way out. Attention leads to desire. Desire turns into action over and over and over again in society. So the most important part of that, right, is here. Attention. What are you putting in your mind? What are you paying attention to? Because the triggers that come after it all flow from attention. So God, knowing this, since he made us, put so many verses in the Bible related to this. So many verses. In Hebrews, it says this. We need to, look at what we're supposed to do. Fix our eyes, our attention on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. So the Bible has all these verses about we need to pay attention to the right things, because whatever you're paying attention to is going to be influencing you. It's going to influence you. It's going to influence your desires and your behavior. So here is the wrong question, and I'm going to try and dispel this one. The question is not, are you being influenced? You are. So am I. The only questions are, what is having the greatest influence in my life today? Where am I giving my attention? And are my influences pulling me closer to Jesus or quietly pulling me away? Those are the questions to really wrestle with. So we're in this series called Everyday Disciple. And we're going to talk about this. How do we use positive influences to drive spiritual growth and connection to Jesus? So I want to ask you to open up your program, take out the notes that you're going to find inside, and grab a pen. And of course, welcome to those who are watching online. If you go to our website at Peniel Church Life, you can get these notes as well. So I want to really encourage you to grab a pen. There's a lot that I'm going to want you to write down. So let's jump right into this. The first thing I want you to understand is we are influenced by what we take in. We are influenced by what we take in. We have to just internalize the truth of this, because we as Americans are really sloppy about this. We have a very different perspective on this topic, and so I'm going to try and change people's minds today. So let's play this game again. I'm not going to give you the timeline for this one. It didn't happen in America. It happened in England. In 1 month period, there were as an extra 12.5 million pounds, dollars, their dollar is called a pound, 12.5 million extra per month spent on baking ingredients. 59% of Brits felt inspired to start baking. And by the way, 25 to 34-year-olds, that number was 79%. Almost all of them. Literally almost changed all of how they felt about baking. And there was a 230% increase in registered home bakers. So if you want to start a bakery at your house, you have to register. 230%. I mean, massive change in their spending habits, how they were using their time, what they were even doing for business. So what was the trigger? Oh, you know it, the Great British Baking Show. Now, the truth is, I don't like cooking shows. I don't like baking shows. But our youngest, for a long time, really did. So that meant I watched cooking and baking shows. So I do not find them fun because this is always at work in my life, same as yours. That attention, for them, it turned into, you know what, I kind of want to start a bakery in my house. They sold out of stand-up mixers in England when that show came out. They sold out because it turned into so much behavior change. It's like, let's buy a mixer. All right, I don't know what to do with it. But for me, the desire turns into the desire to eat the baked goods. It doesn't turn into the desire to bake the baked goods. So that's why I don't like them. I don't want to feel that hungry after the show is over. So that's why I don't like cooking shows. That looks delicious. What do I have in the fridge? So that's it. It's affecting me, right? It proves this point, right? That attention turns into desire that leads to action. But for many people around the world, right? This formula is at work. It is always at work. And here's why I'm telling you this. This is really important. The way you feel today and the choices that you make in your life today, they're not random. They're not random. You and I are always being influenced by what we're allowing in. We are always being influenced by what we allow in. I love how Dallas Willard put it. He said, nothing enters the mind without having an effect for good or evil. Nothing enters the mind without having an effect for good or evil. I was reading about, as I was prepping for this, I was reading about a woman who went to a counselor because she was severely depressed. And when the counselor started unpacking her story, one of the things that came out is that every single night she would watch 2 hours of news. How many of you don't watch the news anymore like me? It's like I'll read some stuff on my phone to keep up with what's happening, but I had to give that up a long time ago because how it made me feel, right? We're always being affected. We're always being affected. Nothing enters the mind without having an effect for good or evil. Now, here's the hard part about this whole topic today. The truth is, most Americans don't believe this at all. They don't believe this at all. They do not believe that they are being affected by what they pay attention to. So I was reading study after study this week. This one has so much science behind it. I'm going to stay away from the science because it's fun for me and I know it bores people. So, but one of the studies I was reading was they were studying the impact of social media, which is obviously a huge topic today. And there was a young woman named Vanessa. She was being interviewed and she said, it doesn't affect me in any way. Okay? So this is the mentality of most human beings on the planet today. I can take in anything I want and it doesn't really affect me. So the problem is when you actually look at what's happening, well, you decide, okay? Here is a picture of a typical group of high schoolers today. So there was a study that was done by Gallup. This was the most recent Gallup data I can find, studying the American teenager. Here is the latest on the American teenager and phone usage. They spend 5 hours a day on social media. 5 hours a day on social media. When you add up all the time they're on the phone, it's between 7 to 9 hours. And by the way, sadly, in single-parent families and low-income families, that number is higher. Which you would expect, right? So it's even higher. But we're not being affected, right, by living our lives like this. So here is this is where the science got overwhelming. I'm not even going to talk about just high level some of the direct outcomes of this. Mental health issues. We are dealing with a mental health crisis in America, especially with our young, with rampant rates of depression, anxiety, and low sense of well-being. Now, there's so much tied to that, right? This, living your life this way, doesn't affect me. Nope, I'm fine. Nope, no, is also tied to things like poor sleep. Does that affect people? Lower executive functioning, direct correlations between screen time and behavioral and developmental problems in children. Direct correlation. But we think it's not affecting us. Dallas was right when he said nothing enters the mind without having an effect for good or evil. So here's something else Dallas Willard once said. He said, the images and ideas that occupy our mind determine our feelings, choices, and actions. And here's what I want you to think. Do you actually believe that? I need you to think that through. Do you actually believe that the images, ideas, thoughts that occupy your mind, are in your mind, are determining how you feel today and the choices that you're making and your actions? You really need to think about that. Because the Bible actually just emphatically says over and over again, yes, it is. Look at this. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be, look at this, transformed. And how's that transformation going to happen? By the renewing of your mind. The Bible is really, really clear that transformation into Christ-likeness, so again, some of you may understand that concept or not, but so that we live and love like Jesus did, so that we sound like Jesus, and we behave like Jesus, so that there is real legitimate power and interaction with God here on this world. That type of transformation is possible, but it's only possible as our minds are made new. It's the renewing of our mind that results in the transformation of our lives. So, there's so much more I'm going to say. I'm actually going to turn this into a two-part message. So there's so much more to say. I just want you to think about this. For those of you who've read anything about Jesus, did Jesus try and go after people's minds? He was known for really a couple of things. One of them was healing, and the other was constant teaching. Why did he go after why was he constantly teaching people? Because he knew if he could change their mind, he could change their whole life. He was always trying to put a new thought or image in people's minds. It was so important. All right, so a couple of things. Here's that verse, Mark 10:1. As it was his custom, he taught them. This is what Jesus did. So are you aware that you are being influenced today? Are you aware of this? Are you being careful with the influences that you allow in? How might the influences that you are allowing in be affecting you today? And you want something different? I do. I really want to experience God in this world, not when I die someday. I want him. So that means we have to do this. We have to be careful with our minds. I have to be careful with my mind. Let me give another example of all of this. So, I don't know how many of you have ever seen CSI. So there are a lot of versions of this one now. So the original, I think, started back in 2000, ran for 15 years. So long, long time. Do you know there's something called the CSI effect? Do you know what universities saw when this show started coming out and ran year after year after year? They saw a 20 to 50%, depending on the university, increase in college kids coming in and signing up for forensic science majors. So they're watching the show at home, they're like, man, that seems pretty cool. I'd like to swab something and find out that he's the murderer. That sounds pretty amazing. And so, attention, the show focused their attention on this, created desire. And they're like, kind of want to do that. And then a significant percentage said, sign me up. I'm going to go to school and learn how to be a forensic science major. There's so much more to that because what they've also had to do is train them that what you see on TV isn't real. And it doesn't work that way. It's not like you're going to walk into a crime scene, swab something, and go, Joe Dover did it. He's the killer. It's like, no, that's not how it works. And also, you know what else they've had to redo? Prosecuting attorneys have had to retrain juries. Because juries are watching all these shows too, and they think, well, if they don't have DNA evidence, this must be a weak case. And they're like, listen, it's hard to get it. You can't just think of it this way. So there is a lot that goes into the CSI effect because we're constantly being influenced. That's why the Bible says this. Again, I'm going to just keep showing you verses like this. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. So you hear the contrast, right? You have two things that you can be allowing into your mind. Things above, things that focus on Jesus, things that focus on God, or earthly things. Now, if you were just honestly evaluating, nobody, just you, if you looked back on this last week, how much time did you spend thinking about God, things of heaven, things of eternity, versus things of earth? Whatever we give our attention to is going to influence us. It's always influencing us. And so we need to give more thought to this. And a couple of ways to apply this. The first thing is we got to limit negative influences. Limit negative influences. This is really important. So I want to show you this verse from Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. So look at this. Paul said, I want you to celebrate and be entertained by whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed. That's not what your verse says. It doesn't say celebrate and be entertained by all this stuff. It says put to death whatever belongs to these things. Sexual immorality, which is just sex outside of marriage. Impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed. It doesn't tell us to be entertained by them. It tells us that we need to do what we can to eliminate our exposure to them. Yeah, this is America. How hard is that? If I were to ask you, more trivia, a lot of trivia today, trivia Sunday. So you don't have to say this one out loud, just think about it. What was the number one all-time most watched show in Netflix history? Squid Games. It was a worldwide phenomenon. If I were to ask you what is the number one most watched HBO show in the history of the world, at one time, if I remember right, who knows if I do, but it was over 1 billion worldwide viewers. People named their kids after people on the show. The place where the show was filmed has become like this tourist area. Hey, let's all go there and see where it was shown. Game of Thrones. Now, if you haven't seen these, they are some of the most graphically violent shows ever produced. At one time, Game of Thrones had more prostitutes employed in the show than any other show that had ever been created, because they wanted to portray not just graphic violence, but graphic sexual violence, including multiple times of people being raped on TV as entertainment. And it is staggeringly popular. Staggeringly popular. The interesting thing is we think that we can take anything into our mind and not be influenced by it, not be affected by it. Many of you have seen this old study. This was done, the U.S. Department of Education and done with Gallup, did a poll and they did a survey, and this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, in which they documented the problems that teachers faced in the 1940s versus the problems that teachers face today. By the way, we don't pay our teachers enough. I don't know where I sign up to get our teachers paid more, but oh my goodness. So here we go. Look at the problems in the 1940s. Chewing gum, making noise, running the halls, cutting in line, talking when they shouldn't, littering, tardiness, lost homework. These were the examples. How many of you think the list is the same? You're laughing, right? Because you know that's not the same list. suicide, assault, rape, drug abuse, alcoholism, pregnancy, sexual harassment, and now these last two are the latest additions, gun violence and mental health. But we're not being affected. It is, now let me be really clear. Am I saying that Squid Games and Game of Thrones caused the transition? Well, obviously not, they're pretty new, and it didn't cause it, it's a factor. Am I saying that if you watch any of those shows, you're going to want to go kill somebody? No, I'm not. But what I am saying is that we are, as a nation, systematically being desensitized to violence. Things that if you took people who died in the 1940s, brought them back to life and put them in front of a TV and let them watch that show, they would be appalled, completely appalled, and stunned that we would be calling it entertainment. Stunned. They couldn't believe we'd be doing it. That's, by the way, I'm not trying to judge anyone who's watched those shows. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I've watched Squid Games. So I've seen it. So I am not denying that I've seen it. So never saw the other one, but I've watched it. So I'm not trying to judge anyone, make anyone feel bad. What I'm trying to do is make you aware that what we put in our mind is influencing us. It's affecting us. And it's desensitizing us. And it's desensitizing us so much that we're seeing things in rural southwest Wisconsin that we've never seen before on my lifetime. Has Platteville seen violence? Has Dodgeville seen violence? You're talking about things that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. And isn't it ironic that we sit here and say that we're shocked by the violence we see in our community as we welcome graphic violence into our homes, but see no correlation? No correlation. Is it, again, think it through. Why did they start baking? Why did they shoot arrows? Why did they start playing chess? But violence isn't affecting us? That's the part we're immune to? It doesn't work that way. The Bible says this, and I love this verse. Paul said, listen, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. And I love that word beneficial. On your notes, if you're following along, underline that word, because that's the key thing. We need to be thinking, will this input I'm about to take into my mind help or hinder my desire to, and I have two overarching life desires. I want to love God with all that I am, and I want to live with him now in this world. So will this input allow me to experience these two things? Or is this input that I'm about to take in going to turn the dial down on my sensitivity to God? Now, like I said, I'm not trying to judge anyone. I'm going to be really honest with you. I have not been discerning enough in my lifetime. Not even close. I have acted like I am immune to the influences of some of these things. So I hope you don't feel judged in any way, because this is a wake-up call for me too. The word we're talking about, of course, is discernment. To learn to be more discerning, because we know these things are that what we give our attention to is going to impact us. So that turns to the other side, and we need to think about, well, okay, I want to turn down the dial on the things that don't actually reflect my values, but I want to add more positive influences. I want to add more positive influences. Now, this is where I literally went through this message 4 times this morning, trying to figure out how I could get it so that I could talk to you about all of these things, and the reality is I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the blanks in this part, and then I'm going to turn it into an entire message next week. Because I didn't want to just introduce this topic, talk about how it's negatively affecting us, talk about turning down the negative without talking about increasing some of the positive. So I'm going to give it to you. More to come next week. So here we go. I just didn't want to rush through this. Positive influences. One of my favorite things about the brain, the way God made our brains, studies have shown that your brain literally rewires itself by what you repeatedly think. That's good news. That's really good news. So you can take all of this negative into your brain and rewire your brain. You can see and think in violent ways, lustful ways. You can think in greedy ways. But by taking in positive, you can literally rewire your brain towards generosity and kindness and love. That's the good news, okay? So how do we do it? Now, I'm just going to give you these. Like I said, we're going to really unpack them next week. First off, use the power of music. This one you can start with on your way home. Power of music. So, I feel like such an old man telling you this next story, okay? I just feel like I'm so old. Maybe you're already thinking, this whole sermon is like an old man. Okay. I just know that the mind is super important. But we were at a wedding. My wife and I were at a wedding, and the DJ started playing the music. I don't listen to a lot of what's on the radio anymore. I have music that I like and music that I don't. So I'm sitting there, and the DJ starts playing music, and I'm stunned by the words. Stunned. Every other word was MFer. I mean, words that were just so graphic, so sexual, so violent. And I'm sitting there like, what am I hearing? And everyone else obviously knew the song, so they're just singing along and having a great time. And I'm like, that's where I'm like, I feel old now. It's like, I'm sure that's what they said about me in the 80s. It's like, listen to what Brian's listening to. Like, yeah, I get it. But music is incredibly powerful. Matter of fact, you want to see how powerful it is? I'm going to show you this. But you can see from all the verses from the book of Colossians, I've been reading through Colossians in my private time, and I read this verse. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom. So here's what he's saying. You know, when you're around other Christians, one of the things that's so important is that you're building each other up, right? That's the teaching and the admonishing. So there's positive and also sometimes corrective. And he says, do it really wise. And you know how to do it? He goes on to say, look at how he says to do it. Through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. So he's like, use music and use the power of music to build each other's faith. So from now on, the only way we're going to do anything when we talk to each other is through song. That's it. From now on, everything has to be sung, right? That'd be a bad experience, right? But he's saying, utilize the power of your music and the lyrics of your music to really drive and build your faith. So I do this all the time with Spotify. If you're not familiar, Spotify or Pandora, there's so many different ones out there. These are actual lists that exist. New Christian music this week, release radar, Christian hits, worship rising, best of live worship, Christian alt, worship hits, Christian pop, and on and on. I just finally stopped typing. So there's so many. I don't care what style of music you like. I got a friend who's into like heavy, like thrash metal, and they're Christians doing that. Not my thing. But I don't particularly care what the musical style is if the lyrics are about Jesus. There's no such thing as Christian music. There are only Christian lyrics. That's all there are. There are Christian lyrics. So music is just music. So you can find something, and I'm constantly building my playlist so that I have things that I do that make me think about God. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into that next week. Use the power of Scripture. You knew I would be talking about that. The power of the Bible is just so important for rewiring our mind to have a different picture of the Father. I always say the same things. We give away Bibles for free. They're on the back. You can take one. We're happy to have those go out the door today. But put this app on your phone, YouVersion. If you don't have it on your phone, put it on your phone. And if you're really just beginning your faith, or if you're struggling with your faith, then read the Gospels, because on that app, you can pick whatever you want to read in your Bible and go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, any of those 4 books. Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. And then when you get a free moment, when you're sitting there waiting and you're waiting at the doctor, waiting at the dentist, waiting wherever, we wait all the time, right? Open up your phone and just put a little of what Jesus has to say in your mind, because he'll reinforce the things that are so important in this world. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. The power of images. So I'm going to come back to this next week. I just want you to write it down now. But the images that we allow into our mind stick with us. Power of images. All right, I'm coming back to that next week. The power of positive people. People are always influencing you. I do want you to think about that. Do you have people in your life that make your faith stronger? It's really important. Who we let into our inner circle is always influencing us. Power of gratitude, superpower. Power of gratitude. Like I said, we'll unpack these more next week, but I couldn't talk about this without at least giving you these. And then the power of technology. So this may surprise you, but oh my. I've talked about the negative ways that technology can influence us. It's neutral. Technology is neutral. You either use it for good or bad. That's what it is. It's neutral. Look on the back of your notes. In the back of your notes, I have tried to add more, and I'll try and add even more to this for next week. All kinds of ways that you can use technology to drive and build your faith. So you can go online and listen to these. YouTube has these short little videos. So Dallas Willard shorts. If you're struggling with your faith, circle that next one, John Lennox shorts. If you ever watched John Lennox, he's a mathematician in Oxford, brilliant and strong believer, and he's hilarious. And he has these little shorts about faith and about God and about the logicalness of God. He debates all the time. He's awesome. You want to watch somebody who's just fun? John Ortberg shorts, the Bible Project shorts. If you've never listened to, gone on and looked at the Bible Project, go watch a Bible Project. Those are so entertaining and very faith-focused. So I don't know. I don't have Instagram and TikTok, so I Googled these things and put them on there. I don't even know, so I can't help you with that. But those are all things that you can follow. Use things that build your faith. Watch things that build faith. So many of those things. By the way, at the bottom of that watch things that build faith, you see this YouTube video? A couple of weeks ago when I wasn't here on a Sunday morning, we showed that video. The near-death experience expert. Would you put a star by that? If you're struggling at all with your faith, go watch that. It will blow you away. It will just blow you away. I absolutely love that. There are podcasts, playlists, all kinds of things that you can do to add faith. So, but this one is, I don't think this one's on there specifically. Would you write this one down? Because this is the last thing I'm going to say about this today. This is persecution.com. You can tell by the title what it's about. So, in many, many parts of the world today, if you say that you believe in Jesus, you can be arrested, fired, you can have... They'll take your life. North Korea, they'll take your life. Many places in the Middle East, right? They'll just take your life. You are not safe. So we are so isolated from that here in America. So different. And only because of where we were born geographically do we not endure what other Christians around the globe do. Like in many parts of the world, this would be taking your life into your own hands. You'd have to really believe in Jesus to show up on a Sunday. Because if the police came, you'd be arrested, fired, property confiscated, you'd be in prison, and you could lose your life. If you go to this website, and there's a place where you can subscribe and follow along with them, and then I get this feed every single week, and I was just blown away. So I use technology to build my faith, and this is one of the must-reads every single week. I want to show you a little bit of this. So this is a story that I read this week, and then I saw they turned it into a little video. So I want you to watch this and think about how you feel and what you're thinking after watching this.
My name is Todd Nettleton, and I've spent the last 23 years traveling the world to meet and interview persecuted Christians, to document their stories so that we can be inspired by their faithfulness and the faithfulness of God. You know, when you ask me about persecuted Christians, one of the first people that comes to my mind is a Chinese lady named Sister Tong. I met Sister Tong about 6 weeks after she'd been released from prison, where she had been for 6 months because she hosted a house church meeting in her home. One of the first questions I asked Sister Tong was, Sister Tong, tell me about the prison. And what I'm thinking as an American Christian is, you know, tell me how hard the bed was. Tell me how big the rats were. Tell me how miserable it was in that prison cell. My translator translated my question, and Sister Tong got what I can only call a heavenly smile on her face. She said something in Chinese, and my translator said, "Oh yes, that was a wonderful time." And I looked at the translator because I thought there is no way that he translated my question correctly, because I asked about prison, and Sister Tong thought that was a wonderful time. There must have been a disconnect. But the translator assured me, no, I asked the right question and I translated the answer correctly. And Sister Tong went on to say that during that 6 months in prison, Christ had been so close to her. He had ministered to her in such a personal way. And she also said, there were some other ladies in my prison cell and they didn't know Christ when I got to prison, but they do know Christ now. So Sister Tong could look back at 6 months in prison as a wonderful time because she got to experience Christ's presence and she got to be a witness for him.
When you watch something like that, how do you feel? So I felt stunned. I felt amazed. And there was a part of me that felt like, I really want that kind of faith. I want a faith that no matter what happens to me, God is so close to me that I have joy and peace despite the circumstances. That's what I want. And it made me really think, would I have said that? No chance. No chance. I'm walking out of prison just because I believe in Jesus after 6 months of suffering and say, what a wonderful experience, right? And yet that's what's possible. That's what's possible. Jesus is so real. He is so real that he can overwhelm no matter all of our feelings and bring us into this new life with him on earth that is full of joy and peace. That's what I want. A couple of things as we finish up today. Are you aware that you are being influenced? Hopefully by now you're walking out here saying, okay, I get it. What I let into my mind is going to affect me. Are you being careful with your inputs? I do want to say this, and I meant to put it on the slide. Sometimes Christians overreact to topics like this, and they're like, okay, from now on, no R-rated movies. No, right. I've read a church membership guide where they literally, if you want to be a member of that church, you had to sign a thing saying no R-rated movies. It's like, it's not about a rule. You can't rule this into. On the other side of that is, it's not about judging. It's not about looking down. Oh, you watch Game of Thrones? Oh. There's no place for this. Either those are disgusting. There is no place. We don't judge. We don't make rules like that. We make a decision. I want life with Jesus here on earth in the fullest way possible. And so I am all about making decisions with what's going to drive my relationship with God. I do want to challenge you to think about saying no to one negative influence this week. Okay, for some of you, that's watching the Bears this afternoon. So cut them right out of there. Are we done with that? All right. And also think about one positive influence you can say yes to. So there's some simple ones, right? The Bible app. If you don't have it on your phone, put it on your phone. You can have notices sent to you. You can start to just pick up your Bible because you always have that's where technology is to our advantage. We can always have our Bible. Always. And you can read what Jesus says. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Go to the Gospels. I really encourage you to go to the VOM website, that persecuted.com, and sign up. And just read it when it comes in your inbox. It won't take you long. They're very short. And if you're really struggling with your faith, then use technology this week. Go to that YouTube video that I mentioned on the back, the Near-Death Experience Expert, that video. It will simply it will make you think in a whole new way. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Now, again, two different groups of people listening to me today. For those of you who are followers of Jesus, you really have to decide where you want to go in your life. Jesus is offering us life with him. He's offering joy and peace and contentment and this incredible transformed life. But we need to be careful then about the influences that we allow in because they're always going to be affecting us. So maybe the honest prayer today is, God, show me if there's anything in my life that you want me to let go of or say yes to. Now, for some of you who are here today and you've just been exploring your faith, you don't even know what you believe yet. You know, God will always meet you at the end of the rope. He will always meet you at the end of your rope. And the honest prayer might be simply saying, God, I don't know if you're someone I should believe in. But if you're real, I do want to know you. Show me what I should believe about you. And God, in his incredible grace, always hears that sincere prayer. Always. Father, I pray for each person here today as we wrestle with all of these topics and such big themes. We certainly see the impact in our society and our world. We know that there are multiple factors to this. There's no one thing. But for us personally, we want to live a different life. And I pray that you would show your great grace to each person who's here today. Thank you for this time in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this service today. We hope as a church and pray that this was something that really helps connect you deeper to Jesus. That's what we're all about as a church. If you need to communicate with us, if you go online to penuelchurchlife.com, in the upper right-hand corner is a box that says, I said yes to Jesus. It also says, please pray for me. Just click on that, and it'll take you to a place where you can communicate with us as a church. So if you ever want any of the resources we mentioned in a service, go there and let us know. We'll gladly send them to you. Or if you made a decision to say yes to Jesus or you have a prayer request, just let us know. And we're always glad to hear from the people who are watching online. And if we can continue to help you grow in your faith in any way, then we want to do that. So again, thank you. And our prayer is that you continue to grow and connect and find the true life that Jesus Christ is offering.